I'm going to go through this kind of fast because I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. And I'm hoping that you'll have some questions, and I may or may not have some answers. But I want to talk to you about the state of our industry to start off. And this is not meant to be a slam. I'm going to explain it. But the reality is that I gave this talk, a little different version, at Q2B Tokyo in July. And in the year between Q2B Tokyos, there were 89 world's first, greatest, most amazing, 72 groundbreaking news events, and 57 industry-leading breakthroughs. And so the question I'd like to ask you is, if that were true, would there be this many empty seats? Would we be having the issues startups are having getting funding, et cetera, right? And it is true, but you know, it doesn't show. If you look at investment, it's great for us to talk about how, you know, there's over $1 billion investment this year, and but you know, we're trending down, and 300 of 2023 is one company, and 300 of 2024 is one company, right? And so we're not going in the right direction. We've been through this before, and the articles are starting to change. You know, Forbes is asking, is, you know, the next frontier or a bubble? You know, Wired is asking, you know, saying scientists are sick of the quantum hype. These are things we need to take into consideration. They are somewhat reality. And the reason is, here's a great example. 2014, Time Magazine, there's this new computer coming. It's amazing. It's going to change the world, cure cancer, do all these things. It's absolutely fantastic. Fast forward to February 2023, there's a new computer coming. It's going to change the world. It's the same article, and there's no delta in the technology between these two. And so, although sometimes when I say this, people take it too critically, I'm not here to beat up the industry. I'm obviously basing my entire future, my career on it. So obviously I believe it. Obviously I want to see it happen. I just think you need to have a little more realistic viewpoint. And so when you think of this, you know, you can think about the differences, right? And one of the big differences is that quantum is science. And so when we see these articles that say, oh my gosh, you know, great, let's get to reality. Google yesterday. 10 septillion times faster than a supercomputer. From a science perspective, it's fascinating, and everybody that's a scientist can nerd out on that. But they used RCS, and that doesn't translate to any actual application ever. Like, there's no path between there and an application. So the business world, it means absolutely nothing, right? As I always say, it doesn't matter if it's 10 septillion times as fast, if it costs 1,000 times as much or 1,000,000 times as much, or it's not available, or it doesn't have capacity. There's hundreds of other issues. We not just have to solve the technical issues, we then have to say, okay, well, now that we have the technology, what about the business case? And after the business case, we have to say, what about the usability? How, you know, if you need a physicist to run your machine, you've limited yourself to a fraction of the people on Earth. There's no market there. And after that, there comes a capacity issue. So there's a lot more things, and what I'd like to encourage everybody to do is to think that, you know, quantum is science, but science is turning into business, finally. After 30 years of my career, and you can see that, because now there's no more Instagrams and OnlyFans. People are investing in SpaceX's and IonQs and PsiQuantums and Pascals and all of these other things. And this is an amazing trend. You know, EU is going to put $1.5 billion into the deep tech sector in their region. Deep tech exists, Crunchbase says, not science fiction anymore. This is a great trend, and we should all be looking to capitalize on this trend. But this is also a new trend. It puts us in a really precarious spot, because if we go back in funding history, in 2014, you had Brigetti and everybody get funding, right? You had this big uptick in funding, and you had this lull, and now you see another uptick. And I'm not saying it's a quantum winner. I'm not saying it's going to be another lull, but it could be if we don't, you know, deliver. And delivery doesn't mean we have to have the perfect qubit or solve some great problem or reach quantum advantage or supremacy or whatever you want to call it. What it means is we have to realize that we're out of sync with the entire customer base we're trying to sell to. They don't talk science. They don't understand science. They don't care, in some cases, about science. And so when I look at this, I think, you know, we're comparing apples to oranges. We want to talk about the fidelity of qubits and the number and this amazing quantum mechanics that we base this industry on, and I love it. They want to know, is it better, faster, cheaper? Because that's every CIO's mandate. That's every CTO's mandate. They need to squeeze innovation out of every dollar that they invest somehow. And so, you know, I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking we have a lot of work to do on this issue. yesterday, Google's announcement helped with this, because yesterday was, oh my gosh, it's an amazing computer, which we've seen a lot before, but today was $136 billion in market value added in 24 hours. They get that, right? I had 200 emails when I woke up this morning, and text and phone calls from all of my investors, from all of your investors, from everybody in the community going, what's your opinion on this? Because now they're interested, right? But we have to bridge this gap. And so, you know, there's a couple of different issues, because it's not just with that, it's out of sync with the world. We are, as an industry, not paying attention to all of the things that affect funding of our industry. Nobody wants to say we're in World War III, but it's pretty crazy out there. You know, Germany didn't have a government. Syria overthrew Assad. There's a lot of stuff going on that affects everything. Saudi has spent too much money. They're borrowing money from the UAE, right? So if you look at all of those effects, we have to pay a lot more attention to what we're looking at, and we have to pay a lot more attention to how we need global collaboration to build this. Every time somebody in quantum goes to a meeting at the White House or some other meeting with the three, and they go, encryption, it's gonna break everything, it's scary, right? There's somebody in the back of the room from commerce going, import-export laws, I'll make a note of that. And we are gonna choke our only chance for innovation off at a time where we're already losing funding and we're getting further out of sync with the people we want to be our customer base. And so, why should we care about this? You know, why do I care about quantum? What got me into quantum? Strangeworks didn't start as a startup to go get rich in quantum. Strangeworks started as a Linux Foundation project, okay? And my plan was, sold my last company to Goldman Sachs. I sold 3 companies I started in the 14-month period, and my wife was like, you are done. And I said, absolutely. Why would I do a startup again? And I said, I'm gonna go work at the Linux Foundation, because I came from open source. And that came from that community. And I started a project called the Global Quantum Initiative, GQI.org, set up the project, got a bunch of people together, and nobody wanted to work together. And we're starting to see more people want to work together, but still not enough. Because I have to tell you, reality is this is not an industry. I talk to 100 CIOs and CTOs a year, and the budgets are minuscule at best. You know, the companies that went public, some of them very lucky to be doing what they're doing. You're seeing the others fall. You're seeing some that have failed. It's because there's no support financially for that. You can't be a public sector company in a market that makes, you know, $30 million a year, right? That doesn't make any sense. And so, you know, that's something a lot of people focus on. That's not why I got into quantum. The reason I want to do the Linux Foundation project is because I care about the $8.2 trillion of lost output from the pandemics, right? I care about changing the climate. 50% increase in CO2 emissions since we started building roads and becoming industrious and everything, right? I care about the fact that Africa right now has seen a decrease in their production of agriculture by 34%. That means more people starving. That's an important thing, right? I care about the 50% increase in our energy consumption that we're gonna face in 15 years. I don't know if you guys know how energy works. I have a lot of energy customers now at Strangeworks. That's not an easy problem to solve. That's like you're hoping fission or fusion or something magic happens, right? That is not a capacity problem we're in a position to solve. These are intractable problems that quantum can help. What about cancer? I've heard so many people talk about like, oh yeah, you know, I'm looking for money. It could also solve cancer. Well, you know what? It probably could. It's probably not gonna do it anytime soon, but that's a very intractable problem. It's a very complicated problem. These are all things, all of these that matter to me, which is why I didn't say, okay, nobody wants to work together. I'm just gonna be retired. I said, I put a lot of effort in this. I'm gonna start a company and do it anyway, right? Work with all the hardware providers, work with all the software providers, right? Be a catalyst so that all of you can get into customers. Because I know I can get into J&J. They're my customer. I know I can get into BP, and Raytheon, and Collins, and all these companies. And I can bring everybody along with me. Because it should be a party. We should all be working together. And that's how we will one day build an actual industry. And so when I think about that, and I put it into perspective, I think about November of last year. I did 2 cool things, coolest things I've ever done, and I was super excited. One, I did the keynote at the Dubai Future Forum, which is that crazy building up there in the top right-hand corner. And that's a convention center. And I'll just tell you, it is impressive. And after this, I went and I got invited to an audience with the Pope, where he held a thing on quantum and the future of quantum and what it was going to do. And I certainly did not deserve to be in that room, 100%. But I loved that I was able to. But what was this talk about? This talk was about the fact that if we go out to 2040, which is where I'm setting most of my timeline and goals around, there's going to be 8 billion people on the planet. There's going to be less than 0.1% remotely involved in science or research, and that's being generous. So that should scare the shit out of you. That's like taking your house key and throwing it on a football pitch, and the house key represents all of science, and everything else is everything else in the world, all the other people. And so quantum wants to affect science, but there's a root cause problem of there's not enough people to use quantum to affect science. And so things like Cordesset's jury theorem or large numbers or diversity prediction theorem, these things will never kick into effect to help us solve some of the most critical problems that we're facing today. And so, like I said, all these challenges are intractable problems, and that's where quantum shines. And I believe in each and every one of you. I don't pick favorites on hardware, software, anything. There's so much great stuff happening everywhere around us, and I love it. And I just want to take that and make it available to the world, but there's a big stumbling block, and that's what quantum needs. Again, if you have to have a physicist to use the technologies that we're all touting, we have limited ourselves to 0 addressable TAM, right? Not only can we can't scale, we can't get started, and those are facts. And so what quantum needs is it needs to be more intuitive and easy to use. It needs to be a lot more flexible to work the way other people work. It needs to understand context. Obviously, it has to be secure. And then, my favorite side, it has to access the world's most powerful quantum algorithms. Boom, 90 world's most. And that means focusing on this area. So how do you automate research and discovery, problem design and formulation, and job execution on where you're running this stuff? And then, very important over there in the corner that nobody thinks about is analysis and reporting. If I get an answer back, all right, from a quantum machine, it's 10001, who translates that into put this piece of cargo on that plane, or put this amino acid in this part of the root of our chain, right? Because that's really hard work. And that's not work we have a lot of people and a lot of talent to do. And so at Strangeworks in July, we announced Strangeworks workflows. I know we're late. Everybody said workflows for like 5 years. But I think they were early, and I'm not worried about being first. I'm worried about being best. And so we built a new stack that we're sharing for the first time today. We didn't share it in July, but everybody had asked, which uses SchroediCat, which is our little hacked together AI kind of interface, to talk down through any large language model, to talk down to the agentic services and copilots that we've built. Things like Cubo builders and MPS builders and LP builders and assistants for different machines and analysis and things like that. And that sits on top of the microservices that most of you know about, which is how we tried to make it easier to use quantum the first time. Newsflash, did not work. Need all of those things, but still people were having difficulty. It's really hard to do anything on a quantum machine. And that sits on top of the hypercompute layer we've done. So that's CPUs and QPUs and NPUs and GPUs and TPUs and quantum simulators. And next year we'll be adding DNA compute, and we'll be adding G. Verdon's thermal compute to it too, so that our users can access all of these things that they need, because the future is heterogeneous. Quantum is a super important part, but it's not the only part. And quantum's non-Boolean. You have to have a classical machine to get stuff anyway. So we just need to all say, okay, where do we fit in to actually solving some of these world problems? And so, to give you an idea of how that works, and it is available to our customers in beta today, and we'll be releasing it to everybody early next year. Yeah, we can use LLM to do literary search and review and summarize papers and rate them and all that. And yay, that's not it's a parlor trick, right? It's kind of table stakes. But here's where it gets interesting. We can also do design and formulation of a problem and automate that in some really cool areas. Now, I have 28 people. I don't have $1 billion in funding, so I've done it for some very specific industries that are what my customers need now. But I plan by the end of next year, do it for everything I can. And so you're looking at automated notebook and code creation and rapid prototyping iteration and really creating and organizing data sets and even synthetic data into all of this. It's super cool. And that leads to job execution, because we connect to almost every quantum machine and all of these other machines. We can not only tell our users, okay, here's where what you're building will run, and here's how it will run, but who can run it permission-wise? Because maybe my boss wants me to run out a simulator before I go spend $3,600 on a machine or kick off some expensive process somewhere. And then finally, the analysis and reporting, which is the most important part, which is we have to take what these machines give us and put it in the context of the business. There has to be some actual thing at the end of that process that a CIO can say, I spent $1 on quantum, and here's a demonstrable, measurable result I received on that investment. And I received it because we prioritized packages better for our logistics and shipping, or we cut down the time in the wet lab for building a peptide, or whatever the case may be. And so I'd like to think that where we're going and where I want us to go is that we make this technology easy enough to consume that 5 years from now, we're talking about a 13-year-old girl who had an idea, who was able to talk to an infrastructure, who was able to create something of value that changed the world, right? I want to see by 2018, not 8 million people involved in science, but 8 billion. And let's start by trying to get to 1 billion first. But that is the talk, and I've saved 3 minutes. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. You, sir, are the moderator, right? And also, I can't see any of you because it is like blinding. But
Certainly is blinding. Do we have any questions out there for William?
if there's no questions, that's fine. That means it was the most awesome presentation ever, right? No.
Here we go.
Okay, you're not allowed to ask questions. Floyd.
Why is this a quantum computing conference and not an HPC quantum and divergent platforms conference?
You know, I think because of the state that we're in, you know, we need a quantum conference. We need things focused on this. We need to talk amongst our peers. A lot of people say, oh, you know, I don't go to Q2B because it's all the same people, it's all the same stuff. Right, but different stuff's happening every day. We're all making advances. We're all learning new stuff. It's really important to share because we're not an industry yet. At the point where we're in industry, absolutely. I think you see more quantum at SC25 or probably in reality SC30 or whatever, and I think you see that happen. But I think it's very important to have a very specific, very focused event where we can all share notes. The problem is I don't think we're sharing enough notes. Any other questions before I get off stage? We have 1 minute.
How should we encourage more sharing, especially with all the industry?
Sorry, can you say it again?
How should we encourage more sharing, especially with all the different businesses in industry?
I think you lead by example. I mean, we have only been able to build a platform that has access to all of the quantum machines and all this stuff because we're very open about it. We don't pick favorites. I don't share secrets. I have hardware providers tell me stuff all the time, and I know about announcements that are coming up this afternoon and tomorrow and 4 weeks from now, and I won't say anything about it. And because of that, we do 3 things to increase that sharing. Number 1, we're open. Number 2, we're honest. And number 3, we're trustworthy, right? We have to be able to look at each other and say, I don't think that works. But we don't want to say it on Twitter, and we don't want to trash your white paper. By the way, I am waiting for Google's announcement to get trashed. I give it like another 24 hours, okay? But you know, we shouldn't do that. We should say, oh, that's really great, and here's how that could lead to something else, or we're doing this, or whatever. It's really about collaboration. Collaboration is key. But anyway, my time is up. I thank you all.